a spring equinox. So for the last 10 plus years, I have written a blog called Sara by the Season, where I talk about my practice of living seasonally and what that's meant to me, what I've learned, and honestly, why I think it's just a wonderful, sustainable way to live that we've kind of lost, that we've become disconnected with nature's rhythms and seasons, and that we have just kind of lost that wisdom that comes with that. And so that has really helped. I think that thinking has helped prepare me for a little bit, for this strange time that we're in now. And so I think it's important that we just name this for what it is. So I've been saying it's COVID-19 season, and no one knows what this season, we're all flying blind here in terms of how to handle jobs virtually, how to handle, children, whether they're just underfoot more or e-learning or whatever that may be. So just a lot of challenges, and I think it's important that we name them for what it is, and that this is a season that's going to look different, and it should, because everything is different. So, and at the same time, we're all in this season together, and so I think there is some help in that too. So typically, I teach a spring equinox yen and yoga nidra class. And that was scheduled for tomorrow evening, which is obviously not happening. But I wanted to share just maybe a little spring equinox meditation. Anyway, so I think that one thing, so normally, and my yen classes up until now, we've been preparing for the energy of spring. At our house, the spring equinox is really the new year, because really it's a much better time to lean into the energy of the season and start new things. January is a terrible time to be doing that, to be honest with you. It's dark and cold, and we're meant to be resting and hibernating, not expending a lot of energy. So the spring equinox is actually a much better time of year for nature to support you in kind of resolutions and giving birth to new things and whatever that might look like. So we've been talking about that in yen, and in our family we talk about that a lot. We've been coming up with plans for our gardens and for our orchard and things like that. We live on a small family permaculture farm, but as of right now, all of those plans are out the window. I mean, I'm not saying we'll get to them, but this week has been so hectic and heavy that I'm just feeling really tired today. There's a lot of stuff going on with some of our close circle of friends, and then just the uncertainty of things in general. So that got me thinking that, or reminded me that in Chinese medicine, there is a 5th season called Dojo season. So this is typically late summer. So kind of that end of August to end of September timeframe here in Indiana anyway. But it's also the few weeks before and after each equinox and solstice is also called Dojo season. This is associated with the earth element, because this transition time between seasons can be very, it can kick up a lot of stuff. It's very unsettling. So even without COVID-19, this global pandemic and everything else going on, this is an unsettling time of year in general. So add that to the stress that we're uniquely in right now with COVID-19 season, and I think it's only normal that we are feeling unsettled and ungrounded. And so with that Dojo season, we typically focus on cultivating a sense of groundedness, instead of, what we might lean into typically in the spring season, of that kind of planting and rebirth and all of that. So there might be, and if you're feeling that kind of spring energy, then just lean into that too. Even if you're stuck at home, this is typically a time we focus on, spring cleaning is named spring cleaning for a reason. So it might be a good time to go through your closets or garage or whatever that might be. Maybe you could daydream or journal about what new things you want to plant once this COVID-19 season is over. Or even thinking about starting a garden, however small. I would love to help support you in that. So feel free to email me for resources or questions or anything like that. But I think it's especially important that if we're stuck inside, or at home, I should say, that does not mean stuck inside. And so it's important that we get outside and get in touch with nature. And that could be an opportunity for us to reconnect with nature's wisdom during this time, even being, stuck at home and out of our normal routines and things like that. Most of all, I think it's really important that we don't should ourselves to death, SHOULD. So this is hard, and just name it that it's hard. Yes, other people have it probably much worse. I know I have a friend who is really sick right now. We've obviously heard of people in our community that are, out of work, people that can't feed their children. So things could be much worse, and perspective is really helpful, but shaming ourselves for our struggles is not helpful. So I think that it's really important that we hold two things at once, so that having that perspective, but also acknowledging that this is hard too in our situation, whatever that might be. So I just wanted to share with you some grounding techniques that have worked for me, because to cultivate that sense of groundedness while we're feeling so ungrounded, basically. So I just wanted to share a few with you. One is just to cover your crown chakra, really, but just up here, the top of your head. And I like to close my eyes. I honestly do not know any scientific reasoning for why this works, but it works. So this is a nice tool, just covering your crown. I like to close my eyes. Some of these you can add to each other. So another one is to feel your feet, so I'm sitting down right now. Anytime you get connected with the earth, noticing where you're connected with the earth is very grounding in and of itself. This is especially wonderful if you can get outside and do it. That's typically called earthing, and there's a lot of side benefits of actually connecting with the physical earth, kind of skin to skin, that you can Google. But even in your home, or if you're just, sit like I'm sitting right here, just noticing where I'm connected with the earth, checking in there and seeing if I can do that for about a minute. Just kind of breathing in. It's always helpful to me to close my eyes, just to kind of focus in on those sensations of that connection with the earth. And then another helpful practice throughout your day that's always grounding is anytime you lengthen your exhales longer than your inhales. Triggers that parasympathetic response, that rest, digest, restorative part of our nervous system. And so anytime you lengthen that exhale longer than your inhale, you're triggering that parasympathetic response, which again is very grounding. So one practice I like to do for myself is to follow my breath and see how deep in my body I can send my inhales. Maybe even visualizing, if I can, those inhales going all the way down to my feet. And then slowly imagining that release all the way back out again. Or you can count to yourself. I recommend maybe starting with a count of 4, like an inhale for 4. And then an exhale for 5 or 6 to start. If that's, if you have trouble, you feel a little out of breath doing that, then decrease the number. If that's too simple for you, then lengthen the number. This is also something that you can kind of work with. The more you do it, the more you'll be able to expand those time frames. Another really grounding asana or pose to find is mountain pose, Tadasana. So just standing with those feet firmly rooted in the earth. Again, this is better outside if you can get to it, although it's been rainy here today. Kind of shifting your weight into your heels. And so then your hips kind of Shift back over your heels as well. Your shoulders rest right over your hips, and then I always have to kind of tuck my chin back, give myself a little double chin so that my ears are right over my shoulders. Our heads are heavy and we spend a lot of our time on screen, so we have this tendency to lean forward, so we have to remind ourselves to come back. So my last trick occasionally is to take a cold shower. It can be really grounding. And it seems to me like sometimes this helps and sometimes it does not. So I think you need to check in with your intuition and see if that works for you or not. So I would love to hear how any of those things go for you, or if you have any questions about kind of living more in tune with COVID-19 season, so to speak. I would love to discuss those with you. And then to finish, I just wanted to read this Mary Oliver poem. So maybe wherever you're watching, just practicing one of those grounding techniques, except for the cold shower. Don't go do that right now. But maybe just picking one. Covering your crown chakra. Finding that sense of grounding. Following your breath through your body, extending those exhales. Or maybe even standing in mountain pose. And then closing your eyes. In the North Country now, it is spring, and there is a certain celebration. The thrush has come home. He is shy and likes the evening best. Also the hour just before morning. In that blue and gritty light, he climbs to his branch or smoothly sails there. It is okay to know only one song if it is this one. Hear it rise and fall. The very elements of you should shiver nicely. What would spring be without it? Mostly frogs, but don't worry, he arrives year after year, humble and obedient and gorgeous. You listen and you know you could live a better life than you do. Be softer, kinder. And maybe this year you will be able to do it. Hear how his voice rises and falls. There is no way to be sufficiently grateful for the gifts we are given. No way to speak the Lord's name often enough, though we do try. And especially now as that dappled breast breathes in the pines and heaven's windows in the North Country. Now spring has come, are opened wide. And so I loved that. Mary writes, we call her Saint Mary at our house. She writes so beautifully about nature's rhythms. And I think it's a helpful reminder for us to think about that spring thrush, coming home still. And so much of nature moves on and is not held up by this global pandemic. And so we can find some solace there, perhaps. And I just wanted to read this blessing for us. John Philip Newell. This is a beautiful book, Praying with the Earth. And so maybe once more, closing your eyes as I read this blessing on all of us. Peace for the earth and its creatures. Peace for the world and its peoples. Peace for our fathers. Peace for our mothers. Peace for our brothers and sisters. The peace of heaven's vastness, the peace of ocean depths, the peace of earth's stillness, to bless us this day. To bless us this day. Thanks for joining me. Happy spring equinox. I hope you all stay well.